Minister Gwede Mantashe has tabled the electricity regulation bill in Parliament. The bill will, among other things, strengthen the role of the National Energy Regulation of South Africa. It will make provisions for transitional arrangements for the creation of the transmission system operator. Now, let's get analysis. We're now joined via Zoom by energy expert Hilton Trollip. Hilton, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Just talk to us about, this step that was obviously made and tabled by the Minister Gwede Mantashe. How significant is it for just some of the problems that we are seeing currently, and how will this affect energy generation as an example?
Good afternoon, Renati. To talk about the Electricity Regulation Act, that's what we're talking about, we first need to understand what the Act is for. So it basically deals with the ministry, the Energy Ministry and his department, and it deals with the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. And the main purpose of this Act is firstly that the Act empowers the minister to come up with a plan for extending generation capacity, putting new generators onto the system. So he has to come up with a plan to do that. That's called the Integrated Resource Plan. And then he has to make sure that that plan is implemented. Other aspects of the Act, the one you referred to now, is about the structure of the industry. And what you talked about now was what's called the unbundling of Eskom. It's the removal of the transmission grid from Eskom. Currently, Eskom has got controls both generation, the transmission grid, which moves electricity around the country, and then distribution. It sells electricity to customers and municipalities. So the changes as far as removing what you mentioned, removing the grid from Eskom to a separate company, that started in 2000. That's been going on for 23 years. In fact, in 2014, we had a bill tabled in Parliament which dealt exactly with the creation of this separate transmission company. It's a very good idea. It's crucial. But it will only really impact the long-term energy security. The short-term security, other parts of the Act deal with that. And that is mainly getting new generation capacity onto the grid. So the reason we have a shortage of electricity at the moment, there are two main reasons. One, the existing power stations, which supply between 80 and 90% of the power, the big Eskom coal-fired power stations, are performing very badly. And in my opinion, and the opinion of probably a consensus of independent experts and academics, it is unlikely that the performance of those coal-fired power stations will improve much, despite claims by politicians to the contrary. This isn't backed up by any evidence. So that leaves, to solve the energy security problem, we need new generation on the grid. It is the policy of this government, the stated and written policy, that new generation won't be built by Eskom. In fact, Eskom is precluded from investing in new generation capacity by the terms of the bailout plan. Eskom is bankrupt. It can't cover interest on its loans. And so government has, over the past years, given it up to 500 billion rand. It's still going to give about another 250 billion to bail it out. But one of the conditions is it can't invest in new generation. The new generation, and now I'm getting back to the Act, just describing the system. So what this Act does is, firstly, the minister has to publish a plan for new generation. That's the Integrated Resource Plan. The minister has to publish a determination, which then says that X amount of new generation should be procured according to the plan. And then the minister is also required, through the Independent Power Producer Office, to procure this energy. And this is one of the prime reasons that we have our shortage of supply, because since 2015, the minister and the ministry, and this is a matter of record, has failed to contract a single new megawatt of energy which has been connected to the grid. They have tried Yes. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if I could continue there. I'm going on a bit.
No, that's perfect. Hilton, if I can come in very quickly there. I mean, if this bill, like we are saying, among other things, will strengthen the role, as an example, for the national energy regulation of South Africa, and how will this then, be parallel or work parallel to the energy action plan that we know the Minister of Electricity is currently embarking on? And we know there has been some significant steps. Just help us unpack how these two then will then work in unison to make us come out of this from a mid-term kind of solution to a more permanent solution.
So, Anati, the National Energy Action Plan announced by the President last July, and which the Electricity Minister is trying to implement, and I would differ in saying that anything substantial has been done so far, despite statements to the contrary. The National Electricity Action Plan does not need any new laws to implement it. So the amendments that we're looking at the Electricity Regulation Act make no changes to the immediate or energy security over the next 2 to 3 years. Over the longer term, because it changes the structure of the industry, it puts in very needed changes. But in the meantime, what we need is the minister to actually implement the existing provisions in the National Electricity Regulation Act. And that is where the problem lies, and that is where the solution lies. So I'm also a bit worried, and we could go into this. Legislation is complicated. I believe that the amendments dilute the degree to which the minister can be held accountable in a number of processes, which are worrying, but that's not our immediate problem. Our immediate problem can be dealt with by the existing legislation, and the amendments won't make any change to either the implementation of the Energy Action Plan or the immediate energy security for the next 2 to 3 years.
Hilton, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Hilton Trollip there, of course, he is an expert on energy.